Hey everyone, welcome into today's weekly movie update. Thank you if you have not been at this show before. What we do here, we bring up the most important business and entertainment news in the world of film. We're not talking Access Hollywood, we're talking about the news stories that actually move the film industry. And I want to open up today by thanking all of you. We've been getting a lot more interaction with the reviews, a lot more interaction with this show, and like always, do please leave stories that you want talked about. Give me your opinions on how things can improve, movies that you're watching right now that you enjoy. I absolutely love hearing from all of you, and like I always say, 5 Minute Critic is about building a community of movie fanatics, so if you love movies, then please help this channel grow, help it reach more people that want to join the community by hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, and also commenting, because I do really take the time to respond to all of the comments. The things that we're talking about today are the award shows are dying and why that is okay, West Side Story flopping, Spiderman No Way Home is about to kill it at the box office, it seems, and what that means for theater growth, some very honest comments from Ben Affleck made about the future of the film industry, a little bit of housekeeping for the next few weeks. So I'm going to walk back what I said about the live streams moving to Wednesday. Stick with me. We're going to keep it Fridays, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. No changes as of yet. Whenever the Patreon is ready to go, whenever the exclusive offerings are ready to go, I'll announce a change that's going to happen then. But for right now, stick with me at this time slot on Fridays. As far as the reviews go, right now we are closing out the year with Christmas, and then we're going to have some New Year's offerings to close out the year. So please be sure, what are your favorite Christmas movies? What are your favorite New Year's movies? And then January and February, I'm going to take us through what I would say are kind of the defining Academy Award-winning movies, going back to the 20s, all the way up through to where we are today. And I've been looking at it, unfortunately, the quality of the movie that we get when it comes to the Academy Awards has been declining harshly, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So today's messaging. Hollywood has pretty much spoken, and they have proved that they view the Golden Globes as their sacrificial lamb to retain the audience that they think that they have when it comes to award shows. And then Ben Affleck got real honest about the future of the film industry. Ben Affleck seems like a pretty smart guy whenever it comes to business behind the camera as well. What he actually said, I thought was very informative. The way that he said it seemed like it had a level of confidence about the future, what he thinks is going to happen. So we'll go through that as well. But let's start off with this talk about the Golden Globes. And why I want to talk about this is because I think the award shows are really only useful right now to see how the world sees the entertainment industry. I was thinking about, what am I going to do? Am I going to go through all the nominees, do all this stuff? When we get close to the Oscars, I think I'll do that just because it's a fun conversation to have. But really, award shows do not have a significance in the broader conversation of entertainment, of film. I think that, if anything, the conversation is just kind of a sadness of where it's gotten in terms of a broader conversation. But let's start with the Golden Globes, because I think the Golden Globes are the canary in the coal mine of seeing what is going to happen. So essentially, there are, I guess I'll do a little bit of background for people that don't know. The Golden Globes, every single year, NBC pays $60 million in their contract to make the Golden Globes happen. NBC, last year, the views plummeted. This is like a 67% decrease, I think, and they were already plummeting. So NBC said, because of the lack of diversity controversy that happened, they're going to not have the Golden Globes this year. I honestly think that this is being used as an excuse for NBC. After no one cares, after a year goes by of no Golden Globes, they'll be like, no Golden Globes, they're done, they're gone. So that is what I think we are living in right now. So how are we actually looking at this conversation? I think there are two views here. You've got the real world, and then you've got the Hollywood world. So in the real world, award shows are dead, and honestly, I think that is okay, and I'll get into that a little bit later. See, award shows are not voted on by people like us. They are voted on by industry members, and the more apart that the groups, the real world group and the Hollywood group become, the less important that the awards themselves become. I think that the people that actually vote on this stuff, as filmmaking has become more democratized, as the distribution method has become more democratized, the type of art house movies are seen by more people than they used to. Like, you're able to go and see the newest blockbuster on your TV. You can also see the newest art house movie. That means that if a Hollywood voter wants to really, really vote on some niche movie like Moonlight, that they feel like, oh, this is the thing. This is 100% the type of movie that we need. It's that small art house movies fit for a niche audience. They don't fit in a broad conversation where everyone lives. And I think Hollywood is giving into that niche market, shutting out anyone that doesn't want an art house movie. And look, I love art house movies, but quite honestly, you really have to be in the mood for that type of thing. And art house movies are a byproduct of the entertainment industry, and I think Hollywood is trying to make it, in a large part, the entertainment industry. And I honestly don't think that... I think that the result of that is that people aren't going to care. There's a lot of other reasons going on, but honestly, I think that's the main one. Oscar voters are voting on movies that people don't care about. So what do you expect? The whole thing's going to fall apart. It's a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time back whenever it was like, hey, look, we're only going to get... The big movies are going to be the ones that you go and see in the movie theaters because you don't have streaming, because you don't have distribution that puts these niche movies all over the country. You're going to have Silence of the Lambs. You're going to have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You're going to have Amadeus, and it's going to be seen by everyone, and you're going to have to pick these 10 great movies to pick from, and everyone has seen them, and it's part of a global conversation. That was a wonderful time whenever Hollywood's interests aligned with the interests of pretty much everyone around the country, everyone around the world, because of the way the business was structured. And I don't think it works that way now. I think that's why it's dying, and those shows are so boring. And yeah, overall, the movies, honestly, as far as art house movies go, Hollywood voters aren't even really voting for great ones. They've been voting for some pretty shabby movies over the last year. Check out my Moonlight review because I take you through the last 8 years and show how that has been affecting the decline. But that's the real world. I think that's the real world situation of what's going on with award shows. But then you have the Hollywood world. And the Hollywood world sees themselves as type of like... the people that decree to you what the best movie is. They actually think that they know what the best movie is. But they'll also be the first ones to point out that movies are subjective and you can't actually know what the best movie is. And that is correct. You can't know what the best movie is. There is no way that Moonlight is the best movie. There's no way that Shape of Water is the best movie. There's no way even Parasite, even though that was my favorite movie that year, is the best movie. To them, I think they actually see it as, we are voting on these top 3 movies, and these are the movies that you must watch. You must ignore Black Panther. You must ignore Arrival. You must ignore, I think it's going to happen with Dune. And I think that comes across as incredibly arrogant because this is entertainment, and entertainment at a global scale is so powerful because when stories work on that level, everyone is brought together in a community. And I think that by the Hollywood voters thinking, we know what the best movie is. And now we've got even more niche options. We like the really arty ones, and these are the best movies. It is very much a way of saying, like, go watch this. You have to watch this. This is the best movie. That's very arrogant. And I think the messaging has just come across as so arrogant. But honestly, I think if you want to steelman what Hollywood thinks, it would be, we know the industry, we know what quality is, and we're going to vote for it. And it's not. I don't think that's even their job. But the problem is there's a grinding between the old world, the real world, I would say, not old world, the real world and the old world of Hollywood. And for Hollywood's own sake, they can't let award shows die, or they can't let that be the narrative, because that is the glitz and glamour, that's the power, that's almost like their Tinkerbell. Without Tinkerbell, they're nothing, but Tinkerbell survives as long as everyone believes in it. If everyone doesn't believe in it, then they're dead. So the Golden Globes, I think Hollywood is talking about this as the sacrificial lamb of their award show industry that honestly, in a large degree, they need to get rid of and change really fast in terms of how to bring the community together. So I have talked with a few people, and I take it that people are saying the Golden Globes have been around forever, so there's no way that they're going to go away. They influence the Oscars, blah, blah. First of all, I feel like that's an incredibly conservative position. Things change all the time. We didn't even have movies at this scale. The Academy Awards didn't even exist 100 years ago, and 100 years is nothing, especially for an entertainment industry that didn't even exist 200 years ago. So things are constantly changing. To say the Golden Globes, they've been around forever, they're going to stick around, I think is short-sighted. Of course, things are going to change. There's no reason that 300 years from now, people are like, oh, wow, we used to give awards out for these things, and everyone watched it. That's a little weird. But the way that Hollywood seems to be talking about this is the Golden Globes, not a canary in the coal mine. It's a one-off. It is a total one-off. So what I'm about to do here, I'm going to take you through the way that Hollywood is reporting on the award shows so that you can see the way that they're actually viewing this situation and why it is that I think that they are viewing this as kind of like a one-off when I really, really don't think that it is a one-off at all. And again, remember, NBC is paying $60 million a year for this, and they are declining drastically. And the most important thing, I think, from the award shows as we're going through the cycle is not what wins. It is how many people care to watch. Because if it continues to decrease, I honestly think we've only got a few years. I do think it might actually go up and then down again because last year was just so brutal in terms of no one giving two craps what anyone in Hollywood was saying about anything. So first of all, and I love this one because, okay, this is from an Arizona paper. I love this because there's so much snark in this story from such a tiny, tiny publication, a tiny publication that is not going to be read on a huge scale. Meanwhile, they are taking shots at one of these Hollywood institutions. So it's this Arizona paper. They start off by saying, in related news, apparently there is still a Golden Globes, which I just absolutely love. And they break down, again, what they are saying the main issues are. So first of all, they point out that there was controversy around the Golden Globes because they found out they had no black journalists in, I think, over 20 years, which is pretty insane that something like that would happen. I don't think that that's the reason why they're actually pulling the plug, but that is insane that that's been going on. They uncovered allegations of financial and ethical lapse involving the voters. And this has been, to translate this has been the most frustrating thing about the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes have never cared about quality at all. And it's the reason why it's the first awards show that's going. They nominated like The Trip, that movie with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie. They nominated Burlesque, that movie with Cher. They nominate pure crap. Like, remember when The Martian was labeled as a comedy? Like, there are some jokes in that, but come on. And yeah, it came out, you know what? Emma in Paris, it actually wasn't one of the best shows of the year, but they got paid a shit ton of money, and everyone that made, all the voters got flown to Paris, and they got put up in these incredible hotels, given this incredible trip. And it's just, that type of thing comes out. So when you hear that there's this corruption thing going on, the corruption pretty much is, we want a nominee. You want to hang out with our stars? Well, we'll give you a bunch of money, and we'll give you a bunch of perks. And it's just, it's sickly because you don't then care about anything that they're nominating. I have never really cared about what the Golden Globes actually nominate because they never do anything. If anything, they kind of poison the conversation when it comes to the Oscars. Tom Cruise even returned 3 of his awards because of all of the embarrassment by all this. And the solution, they then go on to say, is the voters have since added black members, partnered with the NCAA, and hired a chief diversity officer, among the other efforts, for improvement. And that's the thing. That means nothing because I don't believe that's the reason that they're pulling the plug on this. I think they're pulling the plug because you can't pay $60 million a year for a show that no one is watching. That just does not, there's not a case where you can do that and not look like a fool. I think that's the main reason, which is why I think if they get this, there's a thing people don't seem to understand with the entertainment industry, at least people that, report on it. Hollywood did an incredible job throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s of building a really great audience with incredible storytelling, with a new revolutionary form of technology and storytelling. And they've been cashing in on that check for years. And I really think that now they actually think that they own everyone's eyeballs. And they really don't. And I think that there is this conversation with this. It's kind of like, we'll just get everyone's eyes back on us. It's like, I don't think you realize how tough it is to have gotten all of those eyes in the first place. People aren't coming back for this type of thing. If they are, you've got to do more than just put out these PR type of diversity things. It's about good storytelling, and it's about a great show. Prove to people that you can do that. Otherwise, yeah, that's why the thing's going to die. But then they end by saying, if the reaction to the nominations on Monday was any indication, all is not forgiven, and the reaction that was received on Monday was a giant wall of silence. And honestly, that is the worst thing possible. What is it? It's to said that it is better to be hated than to be ignored, because if people were pissed off about the Golden Globes, at least people would be paying attention. But for people to not care, and yeah, on social media, I think it trended for like an hour, and people were hardly saying anything about it, and no one cared. But let's go on. We'll get into more of what people were saying. AP News reported Hollywood shrugged at the prospect of there even being some Golden Globe announcements. They said some would rather see the Globes gone for good. Normally, such honors would set off a flurry of delight from early Rouse nominees and their studio, an awards triumph to be trumpeted on social media, and in calls with reporters on Monday morning, no nominees celebrated, publicly at least, and none offered comment. The people that are actually getting nominated, the studios, the money men that are getting nominated, said nothing, no celebration. They are actually getting free publicity, and they actually said nothing about it. So I feel like that is the biggest piece of proof that no one gives a crap anymore about this thing. Deadline reports, A showrunner, if you don't know, is pretty much the creator of a show that actually won a Golden Globe before, responded to the broadcast of the nominees saying, "This was a joke. It is a pathetic attempt to regain some credibility. Having spent the past few," this is another part of the article, by the way, no longer a quote, "having spent the past few months in a process of self-describing reform after being boycotted by most of Hollywood and lacking a broadcast platform, the voters know that a year off the radar will surely spell the end of the Globes." And that's what I mean. Again, right whenever the news dropped, like early on this show, early last year, right after, whenever NBC said, "Hey, we're not doing it. We're not going to broadcast it next year, maybe the next year." Ever since that happened, I've said, this is exactly like what Cartman said on South Park. Remember when he goes to pull that episode of Family Guy? Cancel it once, and it's gone. And that is exactly what is happening here. I've been saying that ever since that NBC news broke. 100%. And as always, this is a developing story. So here's how I think that we should look at what is happening right now, okay? So January 9th is whenever they're going to do a broadcast of the Golden Globes just on their YouTube channel. And so the Critics' Choice Award, just another award show, I think they are known for picking more powerful storytelling than the Golden Globes ever have been known for. They're trying to fill that void. On January 9th, they're going to broadcast the Critics' Choice Award on TBS and another channel. I forget which one right now off the top of my head. They're going to telecast their award show, and we will see what's going on. I really doubt right now that what people are wanting is a switch up and get another award show. I really doubt that that's what's going to happen here. But then again, if they can put on a show, then we'll see. I highly doubt that. But as far as the Golden Globes, people are saying that the Golden Globes have one problem. It's the diversity problem, and that's why they're sinking. I say they all have a very common but different problem, and that is that no one cares about them anymore, and they've made themselves totally irrelevant by nominating Bile. And they're making an excuse for why this one is going to fail as a way of excusing themselves for not having to face up to the fact that they're all in big, big trouble. Now look, if the Golden Globes do outstanding numbers on YouTube, then we'll see. But honestly, I think it's the beginning of the end, and I am more than happy to be wrong. And I will be following the responses that are happening to these award shows, and, hopefully we'll be able to talk about more exciting stuff as this comes to an end, because I do think something more exciting is going to take that place. I think people need to push and have more exciting conversations, more serious conversations about movies, because I think we need to take this conversation away from the gatekeepers over in Hollywood. It is absolutely ridiculous. Award shows in general, like right now, we're talking about Belfast versus West Side Story, and it's like, for people that are in this much trouble, that feels like a cancer patient, like a lung cancer patient smoking a cigarette. It's like, what do you actually think people want out of the phrase best movie? You don't actually know what the best movie is because there's no such thing. It's like the difference between what's your favorite movie and what's the best movie. I think the favorite movie is the movie that connects most with you, and I really think that if you're a serious movie fan, you should be able to say exactly why you think it connects with you. But I think the best movie is a movie that if you're going to invite all of your friends and even a bunch of strangers that you haven't met before over to a movie night, what is the movie that you think is going to, at the end of that movie night, make everyone go, whoa, that's incredible. And you know what? One of my favorite movies is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and there is no way that I'm putting that on for a group of 25 people that are coming over because I'm going to be laughed at throughout the entire movie. And you know what? At the end of it, that's not their fault, that's my fault. And that's what the Oscars, that's what all these plays are doing right now. But the best metric that we have for if people enjoy movies, and people got so pissed at me for saying this about the Moonlight thing. The point of Moonlight being a bad Oscar pick was that no one was watching it. The best metric you have for if people enjoy something, if how big the audience is the budget, okay? I'm not saying you should never say that a movie should just win because it does well at the box office. But I don't think you can ignore the fact that you can't continually give the Oscars, the awards to movies that no one's watching. And the best metric we have for that is budget, okay? And so right now, there's stories coming out about how West Side Story is flopping. I'll put a review out for this probably, I think, next year. I saw West Side Story, very meh. But the story is that it's doing very terribly at the box office, okay? It got $14.9 million. Honestly, that would be okay if you're just talking about domestic. That's global. Globally, they made less than $15 million. This thing cost $100 million to make. That is incredibly, incredibly embarrassing. This thing has hit, and this is, I think this is from Deadline, this story. So they say that it hit a flat note with ticket buyers, pulling in a lackluster $10.5 million at the North American box office over its opening weekend, despite being one of the best reviewed films of the year. It's not that good. Here's another thing. They're saying after another long COVID winter, we have proof from this movie aimed at older people that people are not quite ready to go back to the theaters. I call BS on this, okay? There are generation upon generation, like, go to the 12-year-olds all the way up to the 80-year-olds. People love musicals all over the place. We have had huge box office successes throughout this entire pandemic, and as the pandemic is pretty much ending, movies are making big gains with their box office. It does not make any sense, I think, to use this anymore. I think that is unwise. I feel like the COVID thing, ever since maybe about the summer of this year, has been an excuse. They say that Spielberg's new update was intended to keep what worked in the story and modernize its more problematic elements. Again, I'll talk about that in the review. Let's see. I really don't think that old people are the target demographic for musicals. Okay, La La Land, there's no way that was a target demographic for musicals. I think part of the problem is getting Spielberg to make this type of movie. The messaging of West Side Story combined with Spielberg is, hey, this huge success from the 50s is being made by someone who was a huge, huge success, really, throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And yeah, it does not feel like you revamped very much of this story. Again, I won't get ahead of myself with the review. But no, Chicago, The Greatest Showman. These were movies that showed that people of all ages love to go and see musicals. It is not just the old. So using the COVID thing, I think that's more proof that there's an excuse. And then they say this that I actually thought was hilarious. So it certainly does not help. The new superhero tentpole is hitting theaters next weekend. Spiderman, No Way Home. And then the very next paragraph, they start, elsewhere, the rest of the top 5 remain largely unchanged from last weekend. I love that. They're pretty much saying, hey, this movie did not make a lot of money, and that's because there's a big movie coming out next week, so no one wanted to go to the theaters. In other news, everything that was at the top of the box office last weekend has still stayed at the top of the box office, bringing in millions of dollars, more than West Side Story. It's like, people are clearly going to the movies then. West Side Story just wasn't anywhere near as interesting as everything else that was in there. So that's BS. Honestly, this is West Side Story is at the top of the heap whenever it's coming to the awards race. And I'm bringing this up because this is an example of the type of thing that I have been saying. People don't want to go and see this movie, so don't put it at the top of the conversation. Read the room. I'm not saying that you have to nominate the big budget movies. That would be stupid to do that. But read the room. If people aren't going to go and see a movie, do not bring it to the movie night. If there are 15 other awesome movies that everyone wants to see, then why don't we talk about those? Or do we just honestly want to have a conversation about movies that appeals to a very small audience? Which, hey, I guess that's fine, but you're going to die because you are trying to prop up a popularity contest with a bunch of stuff that isn't popular. So this is the type of story, whenever I see this West Side Story is not doing well, this is the type of point where it's like, hey, look, if I was curating a huge movie night for the entire nation, I might choose something that people are actually having an interest in watching. Because if not, then everyone's going to come over to my house and be like, you guys don't get it. I'm that annoying film fan, and I've been that annoying film fan where everyone comes over and it's like, hey, do you want to watch this thing that I really want to watch? Because that's annoying. That is annoying. But West Side Story is no La La Land. Musicals, there's an excuse that's saying it's COVID, which does not fit into why so many other people are going to see so many other movies right now. I mean, movie theaters are actually now packed in again. And to say that musicals are for an older audience also does not make sense. There's so many movies, so many musicals that are set further in the past than West Side Story that draw incredible crowds. I mean, The Greatest Showman, that thing was in theaters for like 4 months. That was ridiculous. But overall, I'll give something better in the actual review for West Side Story, but honestly, it feels like a bit of a dump. Okay, moving on to some better news, I think this is probably one of the most important pieces of information that we have gotten out of the film industry in the last month. Ben Affleck recently was on the red carpet for one of his, I forget what he's coming out with right now, but he was asked by someone, how is the movie business changing? Normally on these red carpets, you never get really anything all that interesting, but he went out and gave like a 5-minute answer that actually had a lot of substance to it. And again, we're talking Ben Affleck is a writer, producer, director, so this is not someone that is sitting in the trailer giving an elite view of what's going on. This is someone that actually is in the trenches with the people that are actually involved with creating something on the business side. He says, one of the fundamental ways that it's changing is that the people who want to see complicated, adult, non-IP dramas are the same people who are saying to themselves, you know what? I don't need to go out to a movie theater because I'd like to pause it, go to the bathroom. I want to finish it tomorrow. More content nowadays is watched on streaming. Now, I think that this speaks directly to the conversation that is going on when it comes to the Academy Awards, whenever it comes to why people are not paying so much attention to Hollywood. It's because the way that the types of things people want to see and the way that people want to watch things is changing, and Hollywood makes very regular decisions that only speaks to, we want it to be this way, so this is how it's going to be. Johnny Depp said it a few months back. We reported on it. He said that the people that are running the studios have forgotten who is actually paying the checks. The people making decisions have forgotten that the people that enjoy watching movies are the people that you need to pay attention to. And what he's saying here is that streaming, you have to be able to cater to streaming, which everyone is trying to do. There's a bit of a rocky road there. The streaming wars are fun. But I think the more important part is people want to see hard-hitting, real dramas. They don't want continual sequel after sequel after sequel. We'll talk about Spiderman next. That has its place, and it should not be disrespected. But he's pretty much saying we need to cater to the types of things that people are actually watching. And he points to things how TV shows are telling the types of gritty, realistic stories that movies used to tell, but they've now given up on. And I was so happy reading this because it was so good to see someone he's a writer and a director, he's a producer, he's actually got clout in terms of how things can go if things are going to change. I love hearing someone in Hollywood saying, we need to respect what people are actually doing and we need to move along with them and we need to give them the types of stories that they want to watch. I think there needs to be more of that attitude throughout all of Hollywood. In terms of some concrete changes, he goes on to say that he thinks that we're going to go from what used to be in the early 2000s. You had about 600 movies released every year, and now it's going to be about 40. And he then goes on to say that he sees the theater as being more of a place that whenever people know the type of movie that they want to go see, whenever you have a Dune or you have a Marvels, a piece of content that people are like, that is going to be something that I'm looking forward to, and it's 10 months away, and I'm going to wait for it, and I'm pumped to see it. And then actual creators that are popular. He points to Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson, the people who you put their name on the screen and people light up and they go, oh, 100% within the first 2 weeks, I'm going to be there and I'm going to see that in the theaters. He says that's kind of what the theater is meant for. And I hadn't even thought about it. I hadn't thought about following content creators purely for the theatrical experience, mainly because people like Tarantino, the Coen brothers have gone streaming, but I can definitely see that being more of a tentpole. I don't know how many people go for something like that, but if we get another Tarantino here in the next 10 years, I do think it'll be those types of people that stick out whenever it comes to going to the theater. And he said he was talking about all this because of The Way Back and the way that The Way Back wasn't projected to do well in the theater. It didn't do well in the theater. And then the pandemic happened and it skyrocketed on streaming. And he said he started following that more and he realized that this is actually the way people are consuming content. So why should we look down at following the people that we're actually making movies for? So I loved hearing that. I really loved hearing that. And I actually never really had a thought about Ben Affleck, but I gained a bit of respect hearing him talk about knowing that the audience is important and actually having a way that we should follow them there. And I hope that he does. And then we have Spider-Man No Way Home is coming out this weekend. 290 is what it is projected to make at the very least. 380 million is what it is projected to make at the most. Look, I think that Shang-Chi and Dune proved that people want to go back to the theaters, and I think we need to pay attention to this because Spider-Man really can be the testosterone shot that kicks off the new year and really, really resets the trend whenever it comes to people going to the movies. This movie right now has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. I hope that it is actually that good. Right now it's projected to make 20% more than Rise of Skywalker made and make 35% less than what Endgame made, because also look, that's not bad. Endgame, that was a monstrous opening. That was insane going to a movie. I miss that so much, going to a movie theater after 3 weeks and it's still packed. The thing that I think is most important about this, and this was one of the first things that I talked about on whenever I started doing a more laid out weekly movie update, was that I have turned my nose up a lot at superhero movies, and for me personally, they don't quite hit the sweet spot of what I want from complicated storytelling, but this hits such a big audience, and they do make good content, and to turn your nose up at it is one of the most, I would say, childish things that you could do if you want to have a movie conversation. And that is being said, I totally understand. There is a huge problem with formulaic storytelling taking the reins of what's dominating Hollywood. But right now, to turn your nose up at this, I think is a little bit, again, short-sighted. Paul Thomas Anderson came out and said that he thinks that people, should do the same, should have a little bit more respect, and that Marvel movies are not actually killing anything in Hollywood. It was actually the first thing I thought whenever I saw Paul Thomas Anderson say that was that he's the same guy that said whenever Fight Club came out that because his dad had cancer, he said, David Fincher, I hope he dies of cancer. And it's funny because, Paul Thomas Anderson's a dad now, Tarantino's a dad now, and they're both like almost crying in their interviews. It's very funny to see some very hot-headed personalities now like get a kid and then be like, oh, Marvel movies, why would we hate on them? If people love them, then I love them. And look, I agree more with that type of attitude. I thought it was kind of funny to see how people maybe not change, but how they are, maybe changed, maybe just mellowed out a little bit. But the point of what he's saying, I think, is very correct. I think that if Spider-Man does well, it's going to be very, very good for us, especially when you pair it with movies coming out like Dune right now. I think this paints a portrait of getting everyone back to the way that it needs to be whenever it comes to feeling comfortable going back to the movies. And by comfortable, yes, like safe, but more so like you can trust the people that are showing you these stories. It looks like they're saying that there's not going to be another lockdown in the UK, so hopefully they get the UK money. And honestly, hot take here, but I think that we need to give a Marvel movie an Oscar. I don't like the idea that Lord of the Rings got that Oscar for Fellowship of the Ring just because they pulled something off that was incredible. I think that was part of it, but that movie earned it. That movie earned it, I think, because if you put it up against everything else, time has shown that it has made a lasting impression on a global scale. And I think that means that it does actually deserve, respect. And an Oscar, I think, is fitting. And for an Oscar to give a movie like that an award was also fitting of what the Oscars meant back then. But I think right now with where the Oscars are, where the Academy Awards are, they need to give a Marvel movie an Oscar. Yes, it's very formulaic storytelling. Some of them are way better than others. I didn't see Eternals. I don't want to see Eternals. But what the interlocking that they have done and the interest that they have retained throughout generations is pretty stunning. And I think Lord of the Rings absolutely deserved it because time has told that is something that is culturally relevant to a larger degree than most other things that we get. Marvel has shown the exact same thing. And I think, if anything, the Oscars need Marvel more than Marvel needs them. The Oscars can go away. People won't care. People aren't going to care at all. I think that at this point, it is pretty much like, look, you need to respect the people that are doing the most in your industry. Because if you're going to turn your nose up at them, the people that are turning their nose up are going to be irrelevant. And they're becoming more and more irrelevant. So that's the hot take. Give a Marvel movie an Oscar. We'll close out with this today because honestly, at the end of the day, it will not matter what happens at award shows. It is going to happen about the movies that you love, the movies that everyone around you loves, and the extent to which you feel moved enough to actually have conversations about that. Because the more you talk about movies that you love, the more you find out about yourself, the more other people find out about you. That's part of what is so magical about all art. But I think that movies hit at a certain... I feel like they hit in a certain part of all of us that just is a bit more raw than a lot of other arts. It's very difficult to get an intellectual conversation and an emotional conversation out of a piece of art, and movies facilitate both of those. So the National Film Registry has added 25 new movies. From looking at the list right now, a few that I have not seen that I definitely want to is Actually, I'm going to read down the list. If you're still... Thank you for everyone that has bared with me and continued to watch this. If you're still watching, let me know the ones of this list that you have seen, the ones that you love, and the ones that you want to see. I'll name what's here, and then I'll go back to the ones that I really enjoy. So we've got Ringling Brothers Parade Film. This is like 1902. Jubilo from 1919. The Flying Ace from 1926. Hellbound Train from 1930. Flowers and Trees from 1932. Strangers on a Train, 1951. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1962. Evergreen, 1965, Requiem 29, 1970, The Murder of Fred Hampton, 1971, Pink Flamingos, 1972, Sounder, 1972, The Long Goodbye from 73, Cooley High, 75, Richard Pryor live in concert, 79. Chicana, 1979. The Wobblies from 1997. Star Wars 6, Return of the Jedi in 83. A Nightmare on Elm Street in 84. Stop Making Sense in 84. Who Killed Vincent Chin in 87. The Watermelon Woman in 1996. Selena in 97. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring in 2001. And then WALL-E in 2008. I have not seen the Ringling Brothers Parade films. I have not seen Hellbound Train. I have not seen Requiem 29. Those, honestly, I love that the Richard Pryor concert's in there. Those are the ones that I have not seen that stood out as ones that I really wanted to. The ones that I have seen, WALL-E, which has always been one of my absolute... Before I even saw 2001, I was in love with WALL-E when I saw that in theaters when it came out. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, just talked about that. Through and through classic, goes above and beyond what really most blockbusters have done. I honestly think that Dune is, you can set a marker from whenever you left the theater. Oh, what in the world am I talking about? This is Fellowship of the Ring. I'm talking about Return of the King. Sorry. But in general, just Lord of the Rings. Just Lord of the Rings in general. Fantastic storytelling on a scale that we rarely get. And then Stop Making Sense, incredible movie. Nightmare on Elm Street, classic. I was surprised they put Return of the Jedi in here, but that's neither here nor there. The Long Goodbye, one of my absolute favorite Robert Altman movies. It's got mystery that is, there always needs to be some type of intense mystery for me to really engage in a movie, but it's also got this level of effortless fun that I think Paul Thomas Anderson is literally, his career is like a reincarnation of Robert Altman in a lot of ways, and that I think is one of the main ones from Robert Altman that I love. Pink Flamingos, ton of fun. Strangers on a Train, who in the world doesn't love that? And then Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which I saw that movie right whenever lockdown happens. I love Keir Dullea. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but I love that movie. Again, anything really, if anything that is mystery and truly psychological, I cannot help but just fall in love with. And that movie has got both of those. Otto Preminger, fantastic director, got a very bold style, the type of thing that we see very rarely. List of great movies. So again, give me the list that you love, and that's the type of stuff that was added to the National Film Registry. Reviews of this week that should be up on the channel by now. We've got House of Gucci talking about how critics are freaking idiots and not embracing that movie. Talking about Scrooged, another movie that critics hated when it came out, which I was surprised about. I had never seen Scrooged before, but I really enjoyed it. It was not without its flaws, and I break down all those on the review, so let me know your thoughts on those. Upcoming for next week, I've got a review coming out for Licorice Pizza, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and then just days before Christmas, It's a Wonderful Life. So thank you everyone again that has been interacting, and if you've stuck with me to the end, please help the channel grow, help build the community by pushing this thing through the algorithm by hitting the like button and the subscribe button and leaving a comment. And again, thank you very much, and be sure to come back here later for more updates on reviews and movie news.